Up. Up. those are the pictures that you're seeing from the Lee Funeral Home. The solemn procession has begun. Some time adjustments there from 8:30. It's just some 13 minutes before 8:30, but you can see there the procession is almost taking off, and members of Kibaki's family there are seen they're maybe taking their place in the procession. Remember, this is going to be a solemn procession to Statehouse, then proceeding all the way to Nyayo Stadium for the state funeral. Back here, we have been discussing about, what you are seeing to understand what exactly is a state funeral service. And I have learned from one of my guests, that is Dr. Fred Ogola, that despite being a military kind of procedure and celebration, or rather being Mwai Kibaki's accorded military honors at this time, that the family is going to receive, or rather going to have a pride of place. Maybe you can take us through that and what to expect in not too long when we come back to the studio. But for now, these are the pictures from the Lee Funeral Home there. We expect that dignitaries have arrived, or rather continue arriving at the Nyayo Stadium for the state funeral service. The president himself, President Uhuru Kenyatta, is expected at 10:30 this morning. This particular procession, this particular celebration is very much in line with what we have seen from the British monarch, given that they are our colonizers. So this is a procession that is tailored to what the British undertake when a person has been accorded as state funeral. You can see the red uniforms, the red and white uniforms there, with the full military regalia. And talking about uniform and military regalia, Mwai Kibaki has been one of the presidents that we've had who's not been donning, or rather has not been seen donning in the military regalia, unlike his predecessor, that is Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi the late, as well as the founding father Jomo Kenyatta there, who in more than one occasion had been seen donning that military regalia. It was on display in Parliament during the 3 days that his body had been lying in state, alongside other items that he deemed of value, including his golf club there, that is indicated that he had been an ardent golfer and a patron of the Mutembei Golf Club there, a place that he enjoyed his time there with friends as well as other politicians there. Also on display was his favorite pen there, and a book that detailed the proverbial fast handshake that Kenyan history has, and this was during the negotiations with the late Kofi Annan there after the post-election violence there that brought semblance of peace in the country. That book was also under display, so if you did not take time, rather did not get time to go to Parliament buildings, today is a public holiday that's been set aside by the government to ensure that Kenyans as well as the international community, give this man a send-off, a befitting send-off. And as we heard from Kenyans who had already arrived at the Nyayo Stadium, it would not be a state function in the absence of the public. And we are going to be keeping tabs on that. We expect that particular procession to begin anytime from now, all the way to Statehouse, then proceed to Nyayo Stadium. Just a quick reminder for those who want to make their way to Nyayo Stadium. A few roads have been closed off to make this seamless. One of them is if motorists are advised to avoid Aerodrome Road and a section of Huru Highway between Nyayo House and Lusaka roundabouts from around this time, as preparations are underway to just close off that particular road there to allow entry of this procession that is about to leave the Lee Funeral Home to Statehouse through Awingskodek, as well as Valley Road. Then also motorists driving to the city from Wayaki Way and are intending to cross over to Mombasa Road are also advised to avoid Uhuru Highway and divert at the Nyayo House roundabout to join Kenyatta Highway towards Moi Avenue, then head into Haile Selassie roundabout, then towards the city. So keep checking on your apps. I'm sure looking at the mobile penetration that we have and internet service provision, you can check so you can see the procession has begun, Safin.
Yeah, indeed, it has begun, and this is actually going to be very organized, as you can see on your screens there. The military is actually in charge of this particular process, so they're going to be using the Agwings Kodek road from Lee Funeral Home, and of course just connecting to Valley Road, which will be part of the procession heading to Statehouse Road there, after the body is going to be received at Statehouse. Then a bit later on, after leaving Statehouse, the body will be ferried via processional way all the way to Kenyatta Avenue, and of course to along Uhuru Highway, all the way to Nyayo Stadium. That will be later on as part of the state funeral service that is slated to happen today. That is actually one of a kind. This is actually the third time that the country's history that the Kenya Defence Forces is according full military and civilian honors to a national leader after Kibaki's predecessors. That's the founding President Jomo Kenyatta in 1978 and Daniel Arap Moi in February 2020. And of course we saw a mock procession yesterday by members of the military, just trying to make sure that everything is in place, and members of the public had an opportunity to see this particular dry run, which saw the troops who were drawn from the three military formations march from Statehouse Road into Kenyatta Avenue roundabout before heading towards Nyayo Stadium. So a replica of what happened yesterday is expected to happen today, as the solemn procession takes place to Nyayo Stadium. We have our team at Nyayo Stadium, and we will be linking up with them just so we can also get a picture of what is happening there. But in studio, we have a panel of three gentlemen who are helping us to just talk about this whole process and even the life of the country's third president, Mwai Kibaki. And I'm talking about Dr. Fred Ogola, a lecturer at Strathmore Business School, and John Murage, who was part of Kibaki's strategy team. And now joining us is Ludeki Chwea, former principal secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, but currently is serving as the Director General of the Kenya School of Government. And thank you so much for creating time for us.
Thank you.
All right. So just to bring you in, as you see what is happening today, maybe it would be prudent to begin by asking you, you served as a PS in the Grand Coalition government. What would have been like your most something that stands out for you about Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, the man that many are really, talking so highly about? Personally, what is it that stood out for you about this gentleman?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. What stood out very prominently about President Kibaki was his commitment to duty. Put simply, he did not have time for jokers. That means that once he assigned you duties to do, to perform, he expected nothing less than the best. And I recall that whenever I would go over to see him, to discuss with him, to get his approvals for certain decisions, he expected you to state very clearly what the challenge is, and then what the solution is from your own perspective, meaning that you did not go to him for solution. And then you would explain the problem, and then you would offer what you think is the right solution, and you'd wait to see whether he agrees with you or he doesn't agree with you. Now, if he agreed with you, he would say, very well, proceed. And if he didn't think this proposed solution is worthwhile, he gave you a face that showed that he's disappointed, and so you had to very quickly propose another solution that could work.
So you had to have a plan B.
Oh yeah,
every time.
You see, you needed to have rehearsed thoroughly. Well, that was my encounter when I went over to see him for the first time, because I hadn't interacted with him very closely to be able to understand some of these nuances and so on. But of course, subsequently, I did well, actually, because I realized that you needed to have done your homework thoroughly, and whenever you went over to see him, you needed to give him a brief and let him know what you propose to do and what impact that will have on society, on the country, on the economy. And then he would say, very well. And then you would be his friend. So subsequently, then we became friends. That means I wasn't doing badly, isn't it? But for those who are doing badly, and sometimes I would be over there and I could see some leaving disappointed, then I would know this didn't do very well. So in short, he was a very, very intelligent person, and he didn't have time for someone who did not do his work well. And he didn't hesitate to let you realize that he's not happy. But not in words. He didn't say it in words, but he gave you a look.
The body language.
The body language probably was worse than if he had spoken, right? So everyone had to do well. So that is point number one. Point number two, he was very committed to making sure that the economy works. And he seemed to have understood that if the economy isn't working well, nothing else will work well, because all depends on the economy. And therefore, in even most of the meetings we would have, the focus would be what decisions we are making, what plans we are making, and what impact will these plans have on the economy. So number one, for instance, every Kenyan will recall that he wanted the Kenyan economy to be self-sustaining. And step one in achieving a self-sustaining economy is, of course, for people to pay taxes so that the country has the revenue it requires, it needs to be able to implement its programs. And you recall that he stepped forward personally to push for everyone to have to pay taxes.
All right. I'll come back to you in just a bit, but what we can see on our screens there is actually the procession has already begun, and you can see there the movement of the military just spearheading this particular process. This is actually an honor for somebody who has served the country as a head of a state, and everything had to be organized to make sure that it falls into place. The very first time we were accorded such a privilege as a country to witness such an event was when the country's founding father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, died in 1979. And of course, just the other day, in 2020, when the country's second president, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, also was being laid to rest. And of course, this is actually the third time that we are seeing this. And President Uhuru Kenyatta has been a sitting president who has had to, during his time as the head of state, has had to lead the country in such a historic event. So what you're seeing here is the solemn procession taking its way through Agweng-Skodek Road. This should be the process that will lead the body to Statehouse, where President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to receive it. Something that happens as a ritual for every head of state who dies, whether he had served previously. This is a retired head of state. And of course, Regina, just to jog our minds a little bit, some interesting facts that you shared concerning the uniqueness of this kind of an activity that we are seeing right now on our screens. It is, something that there are certain things that are considered, for such an activity to happen. Just to remind us just a little bit, it's a moment that maybe some Kenyans may not have experienced or seen something like this. Just to tell us more about the history and the uniqueness of such state functions.
Now, a majority who find themselves age group of their 30s and 20s, definitely this is happening to them. Is something that they have not seen because the first one took place in 1978, and that was indeed the first founding father of the country, and that is Jomo Kenyatta there, whose body lay in state for a cool 30 days. So what we have observed with the fallen third president, that is Mwai Kibaki, his body lay in state for 3 days, and this is after his demise on Friday there. So from Monday through Wednesday, Kenyans were allowed to actually go view the body and pay their last respects from Parliament buildings. Safin, as you can see, the military outfit there is red and white. This is very synonymous with what the British also done for these occasions. Remember, they were colonizers, and as such, there are things, especially when it comes to matters, military and such, that we emulate from them. As you can see, it's quite a solemn procession there. That is the Silver Springs roundabout, the intersection on Agweng-Skodek, and they're coming down through Valley Road to Processional Lane, all the way to State House, then proceed. These are beautiful shots from our technical and camera crew there. As you can see, we're giving you all angles in this particular broadcast. That is KBC Channel 1 bringing you and televising this, and we're also streaming on our various platforms. So if you're not able to actually watch this from the comfort of your home, well, you can stream us live on our various platforms, including Facebook and Twitter there, as well as our YouTube channel at KBC Channel 1. Our reporter Yusuf Farah is on ground just following up that particular motorcade. This is a procession in line with the state funeral that has been accorded full military honors. And some quick facts about this kind of procession. This is a preserve of commanders-in-chief, and this happens to be presidents, serving presidents, and also retired. It's also going to be having a gun salute. We understand it's going to be a 19-gun salute at the funeral. And also to note is that this is not accorded to a commander-in-chief, former or serving, who commits suicide. That is a fact. Why? Because as far as the laws of the land are concerned, and this is Kenya, this is taking one's life or committing suicide is considered taboo and against the law. But now you see the third president there, his last lap of honor there, slowly trickling through Valley Road. Indeed, he's been accorded all the military honors. A man who's been termed as a statesman, patient, loyal to family, and just quoting what his daughter there wrote on Twitter, saying that Mwai Kibaki used to spend time with his grandchildren when he could. Kibaki leaves behind 4 children, including Jimmy, Wangui, Tony, and Judy Kibaki. Now, Ogola, as you can see, that particular motorcade just going down through Valley Road. Maybe you can help us more understand this particular procession. It's well in line with what the British, how the British conduct themselves in such a time, but maybe you can give us more details, Dr. Fred.
Yeah, you see, these state funerals are very traditional, and remember that we have a heritage, and we have the British heritage. They left it with us. We have not run away much from it, and they are very standard. Like you see, immediately the president could proclaim that we are going to have a state funeral. This thing went into the hands of the military, and of course now the military, you see, the organizations have been done, and you also understand that unfortunately, but also fortunately, is that we had one in 2020. We did for the late President Arap Moi, and of course, it's just around 2 years now that we're doing another one. So you realize that we are not dusting too much, and we are just going to execute nearly what we did without having to go too much into history, like the one which happened when we are comparing the 1978 of the founding father. And as you can see, that you will see that the family of the late president has been given a pride of place. You see that they will find them in the procession. You will see them at Statehouse taking a strategic location. Whom are they going to be consoled? The person going to be consoled immediately when they arrive is going to be the first family. Not the first family, but the family of the late president. Uhuru Kenyatta will convey his condolences there. Of course, he has done before, but that now this is very official. When he arrives in Statehouse, of course, this is a place where Mwai Kibaki lived. So that's why actually he is going there and leaving his home now, heading to Nyayo Stadium before he goes to Odaya. It's a last journey, and I'm sure, like we said before, that we only take you where you went.
Indeed, indeed.
In the Catholic Church, as a Catholic, if you never went to church to pray, even if all your children plus your wife are Catholics and used to go to church every day, your body can never be taken there. So this is a requiem mass. It will be done by a Catholic, I think, in the Catholic way. Of course, it is multi-religious, but of course led by the Catholic Church. The
Catholic Church is going to be taking point on this, but it's going to be interdenominational. And rightfully, yes. Catholics, in as far as the Catholic Church faith is concerned, we cannot take you, rather the church cannot take you to a place you have not been. So supposing he was not a church goer, but we know the third president, that is Mwai Kibaki, there was an avid, congregant.
Yes, and so
the
even
church.
The bishop said that he really respected the church.
Yes.
He sat in front, but he never spoke politics in church.
Indeed.
And today also, I think the Catholic Church will be given a pride of place. The family will be given a pride of place in this ceremony. Even in Odaya, they will be given a pride of place, though interdenominational, but pride of place. Mm-hmm. But also remember that in Mwai Kibaki's functions, all of them, they used to be interdenomination. So it is something also in line with what he believed in. Also something that you might be able to see there, which I think you also remember Mwai Kibaki for, is that, I don't know whether you remember the first president to call national prayer days. I think these are, so we can forget about these things, but it was a religious man who also had national prayer days. I think Kibaki lived what he believed in. Of course, even if you disagree with him, he also had to say, I lived as I believed. And because he lived as you believed, we believe that this is what somebody leaves as a legacy. He taught the family. He taught them about a family value, like the daughter has just said. He had time for family. He had time for children. He had time for grandchildren. He had time for politics. I think that, for example, what I can remember here is there's what I call presidential point. Can you imagine you are a president, you have a family. You have to deal with corruption issues. You have to deal with legal issues like law. You have to deal with the economy. So how can you be able to ring-fence your emotions? When you're in the family, the emotions in Statehouse should not come inside your family. When you go back to Statehouse, you again, of course, see some of their family members also citizens. They may find themselves on the right side of the law or on the wrong side of the law. Again, you are a head of state who does not bring family issues in the Statehouse. Your friends, for example, like Joe, and you see, like my brother P.S. has said, if you came with something that he didn't like, he appointed you, which means he's your person. But if you came with something which was out of it, he look at you in an eye, shows you should go away. So remember, these are values we can learn. I know some people say, I can't multitask. But this is an example of how can you have all this running. Like even now, our current president, you have a president who has died. You have an economy to take care of. You have COVID-19 chasing you. There's an election year. all these things, you find yourself in a situation where you can laugh, but tomorrow you are crying over the economy. You are fixing the economy, fuel crisis is there. So how can you be able to segment your emotions to make all this work? I think the president is very well. And of course, last but not least, what I would say about in this segment is that what Mwai Kibaki taught me as a person, how can you be ambitious while not missing the point? For example, you want to be president. If you show too much over ambition, your ambition can actually kill your goal or dream. So he was able to balance and be tactful by, I want to be president, but I want to be very tactful. That's why he let Raila say, Kibaki Tosha. He never said, I should take the mantle. Now what we are seeing now is that somebody is saying, I should be the president. Someone saying, I should be the running mate. Why don't you wait for someone to torture you? It doesn't mean he was not interested, but he used strategy, like he said, so that it doesn't look like you really want it, but you want it, but somebody says now you should have it. I think this is tactful.
They should wait for the torture moment.
They need to be elevated first.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so Safin, I see we are getting, that is Dennis Street, if I'm not too wrong. We are approaching Statehouse there. Remember, the first persons to be condoled there officially are going to be the family of the late President Mwai Kibaki by the current head of state, and that is none other than President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I like what our guest has said here, that the late Mwai Kibaki had time for family, had time to go to church, and that's why we are also seeing, family and church standing with him at this particular moment. Sefin.
All right. Yeah, indeed. And just to get more about that particular experience and that side of him, as the former PS, Mr. Chair, you were serving previously at the University of Nairobi, and many have really credited Mwai Kibaki, the former president, as somebody who was a great mentor. I know that must have been a very critical moment in your career, transitioning and getting into public service. How did you benefit from this side of the former head of state?
First of all, when we were growing up, we had great admiration for Mwai Kibaki. You know, those days of Form 2, those days of Form 3, and so on, particularly because of how he presented himself in Bunge during budget days. We would catch words like exchequer, and we would wonder now, what's exchequer? And so on. So we were very, very impressed as we were growing up. And when he was appointed vice president in 1978, again we were very happy because we feared that somebody else might be appointed. And there were other people who were on the lineup, were also candidates, I suppose, but we were not very comfortable with as children somehow. But when Kibaki was appointed, we were very happy. So fast forward, I was very surprised one time in 1 o'clock news to hear that my name, the president has appointed me, President Kibaki, appointed me first of all as a joint secretary in the Kofi Annan process, if you recall, 2008. And so I was now a secretary to a cabinet committee. That means from the lecture room as a lecturer to secretary of a cabinet committee chaired by the vice president and members who are senior cabinet ministers to mediate the crisis at that time. And we went through all of that. And then at the end of it, so that was the first time I met President Kibaki at personal level. And I was as impressed by the way he conducted the official business as I was when I was in Form 2. And I found him a calm person, very, very calm. Even when everyone else feels there's a big problem, he takes matters calmly. And this is what I've learned. Like when everyone else is causing a stampede around you, he maintains calmness. And that's how we were able to overcome that challenge. Then I was appointed permanent secretary, as it was called at that time. And it was a tremendous experience. But the thing is, I was always afraid of failing, always afraid of disappointing the president, always afraid that I could make a mistake that would be seen to be a mistake that is below me to make. And for that reason, I always had to work very, very hard. You will recall that was the period when, in the public service, we were very serious about strategic planning, preparing a strategic plan for your ministry so that it is very clear where you want to take the ministry and the strategies you're going to use to achieve that goal. Then we were very strict about performance, contracting, and measurement, and even ranking. So you were afraid your ministry could be number last. I remember our ministry was number 28 at some point, and very quickly worked hard, it became number 6. So that meant that you had to keep working hard. Then there were issues of performance evaluation, performance appraisal, and so on. There were things like rapid results initiative. So the idea there was that we needed a public service that worked.
That worked, indeed. And as you can see on your screen, this is actually live for us this morning. This is at Statehouse, Nairobi, and we are seeing there the body of the country's third president, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki. A bit of a moment there. They've taken just to stop a little bit, but any minute from now, I believe the solemn procession will be picking up once again. As the head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to receive the body of the country's third president, Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, and of course lay his condolences to the family of the great man who many have eulogized as a patriot and a statesman who had the interest of this country at heart. And one of the things that have stood out about his rich legacy was how he managed to build up Kenya's economy. And of course, we are expecting that a little bit later, this is going to take a shorter time because the main event is actually supposed to be happening at Nyayo Stadium. So the head of state will be heading there, of course, also just to be part of this. President Uhuru Kenyatta, you remember, he's the commander-in-chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, accompanied by the First Lady Margaret Kenyatta. They will also be making their way to Nyayo Stadium to be part of the high-profile list of delegation that will be there already seated and expecting them to arrive, which include ambassadors, high commissioners, members of the cabinet, members of the National Assembly, the Senate, and even drawn from different counties. So what you can see there is actually the military expressing their respect to a man that was once in this history of this particular country the commander-in-chief of the Kenya Defense Forces. And of course, this is a ritual that is usually accorded to somebody who has served in that capacity, whether it is during the era or it was in the previous time, a retired head of state or a current head of state. Regina.
As we continue with this particular live broadcast, information reaching our studios is that Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has declared 2 days of national mourning in honor of Kenya's former President Mwai Kibaki. There, flags to fly at half-mast. At the same time, Queen Elizabeth there has mourned Mwai Kibaki, terming him as a great statesman and taking pride in the legacy of his leadership. Those are live pictures from Statehouse. The president is to receive the body of the late Mwai Kibaki, who served as the third president of this beautiful nation that is Kenya, a man who has been termed as an astute leader, focused on bringing Kenyans together, focused on matters of national unity. And he took up reins at a time when Kenya was struggling to remain afloat in as far as the economy was concerned. And in his first term, Kenya's economy grew to 700 billion shillings. And later on, by the time he was his tenure was coming to an end, Kenya's economy was capped at 1.3 trillion shillings. So much has been said by leaders persons who knew him on a personal capacity as friends. And what is, common across board is that he was a statesman, a gentleman, one patient and always loyal to his people. However, loyalty to him did not cloud his judgment, such that if you made an error in judgment, whether in speech or even action, he was quick to reprimand, whether in verbatim or even just with his gestures there. As you can see, that's the casket that is being lowered by the military. He's been accorded military honors, having served as the commander-in-chief of the country from 2002 all the way to 2013. In December 2002, when he took up the reins, Kenyans were united just as they are, and some of the political analysts have been quoted saying that the death of Mwai Kibaki has been a uniting factor, not just to Kenyans, but also to politicians in the run-up to the August 9th elections there. We've not had campaigns take place in the last 1 week or so since the pronouncement of his death on Friday 11th April there, and subsequently the last 3 days, Monday through Wednesday, when his body had been lying in state there, we saw political leaders also joining Kenyans to pay their last respects there. Wednesday we had a special sitting at Parliament that gave an opportunity to legislators to also pay tribute to the late Mwai Kibaki. Those are pictures live from Statehouse there, the military aligning the casket so that the president, that is President Kenyatta, can receive the body and officially condole with the Mwai Kibaki's family there. This is done in memory of a leader who served once as a commander-in-chief of the armed forces there. This is in line with also what the British do, given that they are our colonizers there. Now let's also bring in John Murage. You knew the late Mwai Kibaki on a personal capacity. When you see this happening right now, I'm sure there must be something that is, pulling at your heartstrings at this point. Maybe you can share. Before you actually have this conversation, let's listen into what is happening at Statehouse, then we'll come back to Statehouse now. Let's have a listen.